Welcome everyone to another episode of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to transform relationships to love and life and to break through those beliefs that are limiting us. So we're going to jump right in and see if we have any live callers on the line that have a question.
Hi, Beth Bell. How are you? I've read your book and I was struck by many themes in it. Just how you wrote about your life. I was fascinated, having known you and everything. But you mentioned in your book a naturopath, right? Who helped you with a natural cure. So I've got to understand like what that means to the rest of the world, because I think the pharmaceutical company is hiding that there could be a cure for that virus.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And as far as we know, I think in the literature, and you might be right that there is someone hiding a cure for it, but there's no clinical data that's suggesting that it can be cured. But I know your question is also about the homeopathic option. And there are lots of things that can help reduce, if not eliminate, outbreaks. And so that's what was given to me by that beautiful homeopathic doctor in Singapore. Now, I just did an interview, or a discussion, I should say, with a gentleman who does homeopathic herbal remedies. And he doesn't claim that they cure, meaning take the virus away, but he certainly feels that his homeopathic herbal remedies reduce, if not eliminate, outbreaks. So our discussion, I thought, was really fruitful. And one of the things that we talked about was the mind virus part of it. And that's one of the things that I love to bring up about it, because I think that when you get beyond the virus itself and you realize that this is a mind virus that creates the shame and the vulnerability around it, and that, you know, like it would be with any of our loved ones, if they were sick with a virus or a flu, you'd be treated with great care. You wouldn't be treated as a leper or have this negative stigma because you carry this particular virus. And with that said, we all carry so many viruses in our body that don't go away. So whether someone can 100% clear the herpes virus, whether there's a pharmaceutical company hiding a cure for it, I kind of don't think so, because if someone did have a cure, I mean, it would be worth millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars, because you know, the data shows that 450 million people have herpes, and I'm sure that doesn't include all the people who are not reported to have herpes. So there's a huge population out there, and there's a lot of people that claim to have a cure, more on the herbal side of things. But I think, again, it's more about curing the mind virus of it, and also using it as a really great check engine light for your body. I think that's really where we need to be with all viruses and all sicknesses, but herpes in particular, because you can carry a lot of viruses that don't give you a check engine light, and this one does. So it's actually a really unique virus, and one that, again, I just feel like we all need to shift the narrative around this virus and how it impacts us in our everyday life.
And I think you've started that dialogue. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Did I answer your question though?
You did. Thank you.
Great.
I have a question. Beth Bell, love your book, love it, and the journey of your life, of all of these adventures. And I could see myself in different parts of your life. And one that I was thinking of in particular, right at the beginning, where you're talking about leaving the man that you married. My question is around, maybe you could describe more about, like, it felt like a low grade hell of being controlled by a man that was controlling, and you being so independent and articulate and type A personality, a go-getter. The question is, and this is what I was asked when I went through my divorce as well, is how could you get wrapped up with a man like that?
Isn't that always the question? Well, I love that question. And I will say one thing a little bit in defense of Stuart, that he was definitely controlling, and yet we had a really incredible relationship when it came to companionship. and doing things together and enjoying a lot of the same activities together. So it really wasn't a low-grade hell. And I think that's what made it so entangled, because there was so many things that I did love about that relationship, and that I loved about being in relationship with him. We just weren't on a romantic level soulmates. You know, we were soulmates from the standpoint that he was definitely in my life as a soul contract, and that he was there to play out a particular role for me to learn some really deep lessons. So it wasn't that he was controlling to a point where it was, that it was, low grade hell. I think I appreciate that comment, because I do talk a lot about his controlling ways. But there were so many things that were very beautiful about how we created that life plan together. But I also think that that's really the point, is that, we get really caught up in the entanglements with our partners. And I always wanted to see all the positives in it, and I also, like, in the early times of that relationship, I looked at him as a Leo, and, Leos kind of need to, be the dominant alpha male. And I kind of liked that, because I was such a strong woman. I did like that I had a man that was, willing to tell me how he thought. And so there was aspects of his personality that were a nice fit. I'm a Gemini, I'm all around the place, and Leos have that stake in the ground. So there was aspects about it that were really comforting, actually. It's just that then when it got to those places where I felt like I was sacrificing, what I wanted, and then when I felt that his controlling ways were impacting me in a negative way, I was already sort of too entangled in it. And I knew that deep down inside, there was an aspect of him that would do and say these things because he did care. So just as an example, as crazy as this may sound, you cannot use washcloths rule, right? Well, he didn't want me to use a washcloth because my face was really sensitive. And it was true that I would often, scrub my face, and my face would be red afterwards. And he was concerned that was, impacting my skin. So there was always like this undertow of like, there's a good reason why I have this rule, or, this idea. So yeah, I know it sounds a bit interesting, but that I'm bringing it up because that's what we do in relationships, is we find ways to sacrifice ourselves because we just don't even know we're doing it at times. And then at some point we wake up and we go, no. And that's where the awakening kiss came in. And I was like, oh my God, I've been lying to myself for a long time, thinking that all of those ways were about love, when they were really about control and about insecurities on his part and how he wanted things to be. So yeah, while I was in that relationship, there was a lot of ups and downs. And as it came to a close, those things started to become more and more evident to me, because I could no longer ignore all these things that were happening. So yeah, that's kind of how it happens, is slowly we get ourselves entwined in these relationships. And so there's always reasons why. But does that answer your question?
It does. It's funny because I'm a Leo and my ex-husband was a Gemini.
There you go.
So there must be something to that. Yeah. And the double heartbreak that you describe with Richard and Stuart at the same time, of going through that, and Richard being a catalyst for you.
Robert.
Sorry.
Robert, no, it's okay. Yeah. Robert was a huge catalyst for me. And, as I said in the book, of course I wanted him to, sweep me off my feet and, live happily ever after and just move on from my marriage. But that's not what my life plan had in place. And at that point in time, I just trusted that he came in for a really important reason, and I was going to follow my heart. And it really had nothing to do with Robert at that point. I knew I was clear about Stuart. And so I needed that strong push to get me out, because of all the things that I did like about my relationship. But they weren't the core of what you want in the foundation of a relationship for a future together. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from our live callers?
Hi, this is Patrick.
Hi.
Thank you so much for writing this book. I just loved every page. Thank you for your vulnerability, sharing that. As a spiritual seeker, I just, I just really give you so much credit for listening to your inner self through all of this time and through your life, basically, especially your adulthood and where you are now. It's just amazing that you can read that and say, okay, I'm not the only one, or
Yeah.
this is not going to be easy all the time. Of course, your book reads as this fantastic dream life, but of course it's not, right? I mean, you're in Bali, of course, paradise, but I'm sure you had many nights where you were crying and saying, what did I do? And all those things. But what I wanted to ask you about was the spirituality essence of the book. So you've experienced deep spirituality, and you really have a good sense of the universe, in my opinion. And you are inclusive of every sort of avenue for that. And I love that. And I think the world needs a lot more of that. From Jesus to, just new age spirituality to other rituals and beliefs, Buddhism. Um, Even though there's a huge new age movement going on and everyone is transitioning from religion to spirituality because of the freedom and for the deeper inner knowledge that people have, is there anything that you are going to strive to do in that department of things in your career as you move forward with this
You
new
mean
famed life?
you mean specifically to what?
Spirituality. Like, are you going to try to bring the world together in a sense through spirituality and openness to that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great question. And I really appreciate all of your sentiments and comments. And and also the previous caller talking about that you could relate to a lot of the stories in the book. You both mentioned that. And that's what warms my heart, because to be honest with you, I didn't write the book because I wanted to share with everybody all of my stuff. I wrote the book because I wanted to share my stories so that others could see their own life through mine and talk about difficult topics and subjects that are out there. And so I do feel that, to answer your question more specifically, that I'm here as an awakening agent. And chances are many of the people that are tuning into this channel, my Beth Bell live channel, are also awakening agents, and that we're all here waking up, and we're all at different places, and not necessarily in any kind of order, but in different places as far as the lessons that we've set ourselves up for. So my hope is that as an awakening agent, that I can help people to either dive into their spiritual awakening journey, go deeper on their spiritual journey if they're already on it, and I think most importantly, to not feel that they're alone. Because I think what happens to us is, well, what I know what happened to me, and what I know in talking with a lot of other people that happens, is when we start to unravel our mind, like literally unravel some of the ideas that we were indoctrinated with and learned from our upbringing, we start to realize that we become different when we unravel those, because we're not believing in all of the same social thought constructs that are out there. And then people start to think that, oh, you're a little different, or, dare I say, weird, or a unicorn, or a fairy, or, whatever label people want to give, because we're stepping out of the mold. And when we start to step out of the matrix, it can get a little bit scary, because we know why we're doing it, because we have a knowing. I mean, the thing about spirituality is, once you learn something and you know something, you can't unknow it. And so all you can do is keep moving forward. But sometimes fear creeps in, and we feel like, oh, I don't know, am I going to fit in to that social, to that career, to that family, or to whatever it is? Or, for me, a lot of times my relationships, my romantic relationships, were where a core of my lessons came through, right? So yeah, I think my focus really moving forward is just to help everyone remember source energy, and to continue to wake up, and to continue to ascend to more expanded states of consciousness. So however I can do that right now, it's through it's through books and it's through sharing my stories so that we can talk about your stories, yours meaning everyone listening and tuning in, right? And that's also what this channel is about, is helping people to have a platform to talk about difficult topics that maybe family members who aren't as woke or partners who aren't as woke still have a place to come to talk through some of these things that are happening as we expand and grow on our journey. And so, yeah, I guess that's where I see my future, is really connecting with others that are on this journey and wanting to shine the light and show the way and walk our brothers and sisters home together.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
And keep
thank
shining
you.
that light.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see if there's any other questions in the chat real quick.
I do have another question, Beth.
Okay,
I
great.
jotted down. Sorry, I'm going to move closer to my
Yeah.
mic. So it is interesting because I remember you prefaced this book with a few things you never did, and that was drugs. So how you go from maybe never smoking a joint to all of a sudden dropping psychedelics. I'm just curious about that journey.
Yeah, no, I love that question because I have always been like a super anti-drug person. As I said, even marijuana was like a no-go for me. I just wasn't something, I didn't want to alter my reality. And so it wasn't until a dear friend of mine, who was also a no-go on any kind of drugs, tried MDMA because she was diagnosed with breast cancer and really wanted some deeper insights, and had a friend that encouraged her to try this. And so she had an incredible session and said, Beth, I really think you should try this. And I was like, yeah, I really don't think I need to. I'm like, I've been on a 20+ year, like super deep dive spiritual journey, and I just don't feel like that's what I need to do right now. And so she acknowledged that. And then she ended up at a San Pedro ceremony, which is a cactus. And she said, why don't you try this? And I was kind of like, yeah, no, I just really don't want to undo everything that I've, spent the last 20 years learning and knowing, because I was so scared to lose my mind. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my tool. That was like my thing. And then I was like, wait a second. I know the power of flowers. I know the power of Mother Nature. Why am I scared of a little cactus? And then, of course, the universe orchestrated quite perfectly that I had interviewed Louis Schwartzberg, who's a famous time-lapse cinematographer. I feel like I tell this story a lot, but I really respected his work because he did all that flower imagery that opened like this. And so I was interviewing him, and I wanted to talk about flowers, and he wanted to talk about mushrooms because he had just launched Fantastic Fungi, the documentary. And then we got into, I thought, he's a safe guy to ask about ayahuasca and San Pedro because they're plants. And so he said, Beth, in the right setting, these can be, just completely life altering. He's like, I would highly encourage you to do it. Just make sure that you use your discernment. So I walked away from that interview thinking, oh, well, maybe. And then I got this San Pedro invitation, and I said no, actually, originally. And then I was editing Louis' episode, and I was like, no, it's time. And so I felt very fortunate and grateful that San Pedro happened to be what I started with. But I don't, a lot of times the follow-up question to what you just asked me is, well, what do you recommend people do? And I don't recommend, because I think that the journey is so individualized. And I think that there's so many different plants, and there's different, synthesized molecules. And I used to have a big judgment about plants versus laboratory drugs. And I don't have that judgment anymore either. So that's also another topic. But yeah, I'm getting a little bit off topic from your question, but the reality is that it was just my time, and it was part of my soul's plan to actually have these interactions with these plant-based medicines, and to be able to embody a lot of the intellectual knowledge that I knew. So let me give you one last example on this question. We can read a lot of love novels when we're young, and we think we know what being in love is because we've read about it and it talks about it, and there's all these details. But until you actually fall in love, you don't really know, like that feeling of embodiment of, oh, of course you're still just experiencing your own love in that situation, but you're experiencing it in a way that you can't deny. And so I look at psychedelics a little bit like that it gave me an opportunity to see ideas spiritual concepts and ideas that I had no idea when I embodied them were going to be like that. So that became really fascinating for me to understand, oneness. Like everybody talks about oneness, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Like, I get it, but I don't get it. How are we all one? And so concepts like that, psychedelics, were able to really help me understand. And so I think we all know that sometimes words just can't describe experiences that we have in life. And so I would definitely say that sums up a lot of psychedelic experiences, because a lot of times we can't necessarily describe, and we can describe the stories, but you can't necessarily describe the innate embodiment that you feel, being connected to yourself at your highest level of source, which is God energy, whatever you want to call it. God, Buddha, Krishna have all demonstrated a level of this connection as a human in a body, being connected to source energy. So again, I know I gave a long answer.
No, that's
I
good.
covered that, but yeah.
You did. And just a quick question. So it's only been plant-based with you. You haven't tried the lab-based psychedelics.
I have tried MDA, which is a synthesized product, and I don't have that judgment any longer. I used to think, oh, okay, well, MDMA, LSD, all these lab-based ones are not nature. And I guess what happened for me is I started to understand that, there's individuals who have channeled these molecules, and they were created in an actual pharmaceutical lab by scientists. And I'm not saying every drug that gets, developed by a scientist in a lab means that it's, the same as a
viable.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the same, but I'm just saying I don't have the same judgment against synthetic created molecules, because I do think that they were divinely guided, these scientists, to create them. And I think maybe one other thing to say is, I'm not acting as an expert on all aspects of psychedelics and or brain chemistry. And if I was, that would be ridiculous, because there's no one out there that actually understands all of what's happening to our brain with psychedelics. But I think what's important is that when we're talking about psychedelics, it's a different category, and they work on different receptors than some of the other drugs, like a cocaine or a heroin or something that's working more on dopamine receptors. And so what's happening here with psychedelics is they're working on shutting down the default mode network. It's increasing neuroplasticity. When we shut down this default mode network, it allows us to stop the narrative of all the storylines that are going on in our mind, and allows us to open to our true self, and to hear our higher self speak, spirit, our soul. And so, yeah, I think that it's about discernment about which molecules that you're looking to possibly, I'm not necessarily suggesting you specifically, but I mean like the listeners as a whole, as to which ones you're looking to do. And the good news is, in some ways, and I get challenged on this part too, but that a lot of them are being scientifically studied and looking to get FDA approval. Now they are stripping them down, and they're trying to make them certain little molecules. And that's like probably a whole nother 5 episodes to talk about, the good, the bad, the ugly with all of that. I do think that the natural plant-based medicines give a full spectrum, and that they do their magic based on what your soul is asking to come through into your body. So I think there is like an interesting dynamic there, but I don't have a judgment against something like LSD or some of the other ones that are synthesized.
Which is great to hear from you, because I do prefer natural. So just to hear that is great, and I think there is a lot of promise in this area. I do, both plant-based as well as synthetic. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be really interesting, because the synthetic part, and well, the plant-based as well, but pharmaceutical companies in general, let's just take the heat off of pharma, but companies in general want and need to make money to be profitable, because that's how it works. And so in order to do that, they need to find something that's patentable, something that someone else can't make and make the money off of when they've spent all the money on the clinical research and the clinical trials themselves. So there's like really legit business reasons why they're doing all of these things. But it would be really nice if there could just be funding for mushrooms as they are, psilocybin mushrooms. There's many different types. And if someone would just provide billions of dollars for funding to look at the natural mushrooms themselves, or, you know, whatever natural product, and study it and make it available and not have to make money off of it, but just say, you know, we're going to look at the mental health aspect of this.
And that's what this country needs. So can you
Exactly.
get busy on that too, Beth, please?
Yes. Yes. I would love that. So yeah, I think, you know, I think what's happening though with the business side of it is going to help shift the narrative. It is going to help people to just understand psychedelics as awakening agents, as opposed to the war on drugs, which happened in the 60s and 70s, and the whole, this is the egg in the frying pan and all of that happened. And some of that obviously for good reason. Like we needed to have some ideas around some drugs that weren't helping, but psychedelics, the word itself means mind manifesting. It was coined by a scientist, and so it is about understanding our mind. And I'm all about getting the mind in the back seat and letting our soul drive. It's not always so easy. I still work on it every day of my life, but yeah, that is what psychedelics help us do, is just to get that ego mind in its rightful place, so that our soul's driving.
Excellent. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope everyone will join in next week, and subscribe to the channel. If this is interesting to you and you want to hear more, hit the bell. It'll give you notifications of when new episodes are coming up or when new episodes have posted. So I hope you'll all join into the live sessions on Beth Bell Live on YouTube. Thank you so much.